Welcome to another episode of OG55. We have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Evan Patel. We got the Italiano with us today. We are talking all about Walt Disney World. We're talking about those EPCOT changes. We're talking about Tiana's Bayou Adventure. We're even going to dip into some epic universe up next here on OG55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. Today, we're talking all about Walt Disney World with a very special guest. We got Mr. Evan Patel with us. Evan, thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could let everybody know a little bit about yourself and where they can find you on social media.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name's Evan Patel. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, but I do live down here now in Orlando, Florida. I go to school here at UCF. I'm studying architecture with the hopes of becoming an Imagineer for the Walt Disney Company one day. So perfect place to be. And yeah, I post a lot on Twitter. My handle is Evan Patel 11, and then my Instagram, which is just my name, Evan Patel. So
awesome. And I'll be linking his Twitter account, and his Instagram down below in the description. And we got the Italiano here with us again. Good to see you, sir. If you could let everybody home know where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. And if you could just do me a favor, just don't post my ex. I'm trying to get away from her.
Right, exactly. Yeah, George has an ex-wife situation, right?
Yeah. But anyway, if you'd like to find me on social media, you could do so on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you could find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
See, Evan, George over here, he comes up with all the snazzy like spiels and stuff. I'm just like, I wing it every time.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
So let's dive into the topics today. I want to talk about Tiana's Bayou Adventure, because that's still like a pretty hot topic in the community. A lot of people are still talking about it. I've been seeing some good stuff in regards to like the attraction, but I've also seen some negative stuff in terms of like breakdowns and things like that. Evan, you're pretty close to the resort out there. Have you been on Tiana's yet?
I have. I was invited by one of my cast member friends, and I got to ride with him like a week and a half ago. So yeah, we got on. To be fair, as soon as we hopped in line, it went down for 2 hours. So we were stuck in line for a while, but we're like, all right, it's the first time. We're just gonna get over with it and wait it, and it was well worth it in my opinion. But
okay, that's interesting. So I haven't talked to you about Tiana, so I'm kind of curious to get your kind of like your raw reaction to this. Like you said, it was well worth it. So you liked it a pretty. I mean, for the most part, you enjoyed it.
Yes, 100%. I definitely enjoyed it.
Interesting. So like, would you say, because there's always these comparisons like with Splash Mountain and things like that. And I've been actually really bullish. I haven't been on it yet because I'm out here in California, but I've been really bullish about this Tiana's Bayou Adventure retheme, because I think this IP could work really well in that space, kind of like this bayou. We have out here, we have Pirates of the Caribbean. We got like a bayou. And when you first get in your boat, this beautiful little bayou section, very slow moving, but they got the little fireflies and stuff. And I've been saying for a long time, I would love to see that on a grand scale in that Splash Mountain show building. But what are your overall takes in terms of the comparisons of like, I mean, did you like it more than Splash Mountain? The same? Did it work as well for you creatively? How do you see it?
Are we doing spoilers?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I was a really big Splash Mountain fan. I grew up with it as a kid, so I loved doing the ride. And as I got older, I started to appreciate like the storyline that went into it, and like it's got that the classic 90s Disney feel where it's like, it's very, very well done. So I loved Splash Mountain. I did a little documentary of it on my YouTube channel. And then I was obviously really sad to see it go. But at the same time, I understood why it had to go. And so I had a lot of confidence going into Tiana's Bayou Adventure that it would be good because of the fact that it is a really political shift. So I know that Disney would be putting a lot of effort into making sure that they do it right, because they have a lot to live up to. You know, a lot of people love Splash Mountain. It's very clearly online. Like, people have very one-sided opinions. You either hate it or you love it, and I think that's because it's a political thing. But I definitely enjoyed it a lot. I thought that it definitely lives up to Splash Mountain's legacy, because it feels like Splash Mountain. You know, it's the same ride layout. It's the same ride basically. But the thing that I would say is much different is the vibe. They completely shifted the vibe from Splash Mountain to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Kind of what you were saying with Pirates, it has that Bayou feel, and that Bayou feel it's very strong throughout the entire attraction, and especially in the indoor scenes. Now, I haven't had the opportunity to ride it at night, and I'm sure the outdoor scenes will have that same kind of feel. But I really enjoyed it. I think that it is great. I think a lot of people who don't enjoy it are still being kind of closed-minded and really hanging on to Splash the most that they can, because Tiana's Bayou Adventure is a really good ride. There are a lot of really cool things in it, and
yeah, no, well said. I've been saying this for a long time too, Evan, where it's like there's a subset of people that are like, they were against the retheme from day one, right? On the announcement, they didn't like it,
Yep.
right? And a lot of people, not everybody that doesn't like it. There's some fair critiques out there and people that just genuinely don't like it. That's fair. But I think there are a group of people that have made up their mind 3-4 years ago. And you could have, you know, the alligator animatronic going through the flume, guiding your log, and they would complain, you know. Like, you could have anything. I mean, they knew from day one that this thing was not going to be, they weren't going to like it. You know what I'm saying? So I completely understand what you're saying there. George, what do you think? What do you think about what Evan's saying here in regards to in regards to this retheme? Has a different vibe? Does it encourage you?
Yeah, kind of going off to what Evan was saying, it definitely is one side or the other. You know, right now there's no middle common ground. It's either, you know, you love it or you hate it. If you love it, you know, you're a pixie duster. If you hate it, you know, it's, you know, I don't get it. But I mean, I'm very optimistic about it. I have not yet, you know, been able to experience it yet. However, I will in the next
month or so.
Yeah. So I'm actually very curious to see it for myself. I always find the way to, you know, look at the glass half full and say, you know what, this is the hand we've been dealt with. So let's try to enjoy it as much as possible. Let's see it as a brand new attraction, something new, something different that's been put into the park. You know, you have these people that bitch, moan, and complain about saying we don't get nothing new. And then when we get something new, they still bitch, moan, and complain. It's like, right. I don't get it.
Well, and here's the thing too, right? Okay, out here in California, we had the Hollywood Tower Hotel, like what you guys have out there in Florida, but ours was much different. Ours was very much a light version. We didn't have the cool, like, you know, fourth dimensional room and all that cool stuff. But like, the thing is like when they rethemed that attraction to Mission Breakout, Guardians of the Galaxy, the retheme, the energy, the vibe, the tone, all of that was like completely swapped out. Like, you know, you went from a very slow kind of tense buildup with Hollywood Tower Hotel to a very energized, like almost like just like this fun feeling with Mission Breakout, this like adventurous kind of fun vibe. Totally different energy. But that's the thing. I think when it comes to these rethemes, I think you kind of want to do that. You want to create you want to create a situation where it doesn't feel like those Halloween stores at the mall. Like, we know when like a Macy's goes out of business or a mall store goes out of business and they just put a Halloween store in there, and you can tell it was a former Macy's, right? The fixtures are still there. It has that feeling. You don't want it to feel like that. You want these rethemes to feel very much like a new thing. And I think that when you create a new energy, a new vibe for these rethemes, I think that you do that, right? Because if you kept a lot of the same beats that Splash Mountain had, it would feel like you're retheming Splash Mountain. I think it was important to sort of change up the energy. And that's why I'm not so upset about that lift hill. A lot of people are upset like the tension was there for Splash Mountain. And that was fantastic. And that worked for Splash Mountain. But if you were to do the same thing here, it might be too similar, and it might be, you want to differentiate these two experiences. You know, you don't want to have an exact same energy. So I don't know. Now, Evan, we talk a lot here on the channel about like the nerds and the normies. It's not really open officially yet. It opens pretty soon though to the general public. Do you think the normies are going to embrace this? The theme park nerds have been kind of talking about it on Twitter for a while, but you think the normies, like the average family, the soccer moms, are gonna be into this thing?
I don't know how someone wouldn't be into it, honestly, because kind of what you're saying with like the changing of the tension and stuff. It's really lighthearted. It is much more like family oriented, and I think for that reason it will draw maybe more people in because it's really fun and it's very like enjoyable the whole time. Like I was smiling the whole time. It's a lot of fun. There are no dark moments like Splash Mountain had. And so I think that the general population will definitely like that.
Yeah, it's interesting too because a lot of people have the criticism, and I get it, I understand it, but like the criticism is like, okay, well, it's a thrill ride because you have the drop, but then it has like a height requirement. I think it's like a 40-inch height requirement, right? But I'm like, yeah, that's been like a critique, right? And I'm like, okay, because Tiana, it's a princess movie, like little girls might want to go on it, But then I'm thinking like, okay, well, Harry Potter. And this is just my opinion. I think Harry Potter, like the book series and stuff, is a younger audience too. Probably not too dissimilar as like of a demo as like the Disney princesses, right? Like a Tiana. And those rides have height requirements. Like Forbidden Journey definitely does. I think it's like a 36, 40-inch height requirement. So it's like I don't see the difference here really. And I guess you can make the case either way. But what are your thoughts on that, George? In terms of like, okay, it's a princess ride, but there's a height requirement. Does it matter? Or I don't know.
So here's the thing. Like when people say it is a quote unquote a princess ride, where yes, the main character is a princess, but there's a lot more still going on that just doesn't solidify it just as a princess. You have Lewis the Gator, you have kind of this thrill factor. You have all these little critters and everything. So yeah, I mean, there's moments where because it's a princess that, if a little girl happens to be not quite up to that height bar, it's like, okay, we'll try next time. The same thing like with Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, that's based off, I know it's more of the Seven Dwarfs, but it's still part of Snow White, so it's like, hey, if you have a little one, it's like, okay, maybe not this time, maybe the next time. And I think that's where that children should learn to kind of learn that, you're going to have disappointment in life. As much as you want to experience stuff, sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes, you're not always going to have your cake and eat it. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit, and that's okay. You kind of.
So wait, George, real quick, why would you give me cake if I couldn't eat it? I don't understand that.
Yes.
I was playing with you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. But that way it's you kind of like make it to be where it's like, okay, well, we have something to look forward to, for next time and what have you. So it's like, no matter what kind of character IP that they decide to put in this, I think honestly that's a little bit of a cop-out to just say, oh, because it's a princess, it shouldn't be a 40-inch height requirement. What if you put in any other kind of IP that'd still say something, like even if it was something geared towards the boys? Okay, well, the boys like this, but the height requirement is 40 inches. So, but that would make them disappointed too. So it's like, no matter which way you go, it's...
Yeah, and you bring up a great point with the mine train. I mean, that I would imagine has probably a similar height requirement, right? As Tiana's. I don't know, and even like the How to Train Your Dragon stuff they're building over their Epic Universe.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look into it, the exact height requirements, but I'm sure some of those attractions, like the coaster and that thing that's up in the air that spins you, I'm sure that has some kind of height requirements to it, and that's a kid's land. What was that, Evan? I'm sorry.
I said it has to. Those are like the spinning one, like for sure is going to get a decent height requirement. Like so, and that's like their Toy Story Land. So
exactly, the Slinky Dog, right? I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting critique. I understand, like I guess the perspective, but like when you look at like other examples, it's like this is not the first time we've had like.
And really, honestly, too, that's where we should do our research. That if you're planning on a trip and you're having a little one, go on the website and check all the height requirements. See where your child's height is indicated for what they can or cannot ride.
Right.
Because I mean, chances are, I mean, I doubt seriously that a woman would birth out a child that's 40 inches or higher starting out. So obviously you have to wait for them to grow some, otherwise they'd be walking sideways. But
Walking sideways.
but it's like, so, do your homework. If you're planning on doing a trip, it's like, if you're going to go with a little one, chances are there's going to be things that they're not going to be tall enough to ride.
Yeah. Well, and I think it comes down to like what Evan said early on in the show, where it's like, there's just going to be, I think a lot of it too, there's a lot of nitpickiness with this attraction because of the political kind of scrutiny it's going through. So there's some of that in there too, where if this was themed to anything else, this probably wouldn't necessarily be in the conversation with a lot of fans, but it is because political stuff, and you got to make a point politically, so you're gonna nitpick it and stuff like that. But interesting stuff though. I'm really excited to ride this thing. I'm probably not gonna ride it actually probably until Disneyland gets theirs, which I'm hearing is like probably like November, ish. I don't know. We'll see. But George, I'm very curious your take on it when you finally get to ride it. One thing that Disney though has to get a hold of is these breakdowns. They got
operations.
Yeah, they got to get that under control. Evan, you're local over there. Have you seen any improvement in that, or heard any improvement in regard to this thing going down so much?
I don't know. Originally when it started doing cast previews at the very beginning, we got all the news about downtime, evacuations, whatever, and then I was like, all right, well, they have time in between to fix it, so they'll get it done. Then it came time for my cast preview, it goes down and continues to have downtime problems. And then the other day, I went on one of the last annual pass preview days, and that was the day that they didn't even open the 1 p.m. virtual queue drop because it was having so much downtime. So they had it closed like the whole day. And so I don't know if they're making any improvements, because like I assumed that they would have been, but it seems like they're not.
Interesting.
But I mean, I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Hopefully they can get it under control, because that's gonna be a problem. George, you were saying there was like D23 previews. Have those already happened?
It's what's today?
Today, actually, I think
it's today, June 22nd.
Okay.
So I'm very curious to see if anybody says anything, because that was actually a upcharge event for people who are D23 members to be able to ride this early. So hopefully they didn't have too many issues, because if there are some D23 members that don't get the opportunity to ride it after paying for that ticket and possibly traveling down there if they are not a Florida resident, they're going to have to do something.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on that. But we're going to pivot now we're going to stay in Florida. We're going to do EPCOT now. The Communicore Hall finally opened after a lengthy construction timeline, to say the least. Now, George and I have not experienced the Communicore Hall yet, but Evan has. Evan, and by the way, I want to say too, you guys got to follow, everyone has to follow Evan on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it now, because he does these great little short 2 or 3 minute videos while in the park. Really great stuff. So make sure you follow him on Twitter. Absolutely. But Evan, what were your thoughts for this Communicore Hall when you experienced it?
Well, on Twitter, I said my one word would be interesting, and that it is. It is very interesting. That whole area, so it all opened. It was Communicore Hall, and then the meet and greet area, and then the Encanto show. They all three opened together. It's all like the same little quadrant of World Celebration. And I will say the meet and greet space is pretty cool. There's a really cool mural on the side of it, and then the Encanto show is whatever. I'm not a huge fan of that, but whatever. But Communicore Hall itself is a miss, in my opinion. It is very odd. It's like I've never experienced anything like it in a Disney park. It's like on the outside it has all the geodesic tiling and the LED lights, and it looks like it belongs. But then the second you step in, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like something that I see on my college campus. That's the best way to put it. It is a very nice space, but it lacks like soul. There's nothing Disney in there at all. It doesn't feel like a Disney space. It feels like something you would see at a college campus.
That's fascinating. Yeah, we were looking at the pictures. It was looking a little bare in there. And I understand the approach to some degree with, if you're going to have a flex space, you don't want to go too much into like specific theming, because then it kind of works against whatever festival you have in there. You have to have some level of like neutrality so you can fit anything in there. But at the same time, I think they went a little too overboard with it being super neutral, where it was like you were saying, it was just like a college cafeteria or something. They could have stepped it up. Absolutely. And the other thing too is I've seen a lot of people blaming like Bob Iger and stuff for this, and I got to push back on that. Not because I'm going to defend Bob Iger. I could care less, about Bob Iger. I mean, I care about the parks and stuff, but I don't care about Bob Iger's image or his legacy or any of that. But I think people are putting the blame kind of in the wrong direction, because this whole thing, this is like, in my opinion, this is residual Chapek. And even like, this is residual Chapek, where it's like, this thing has been in the pipeline for a few years when Chapek was running the parks and was CEO. And just because it opens now under Iger and this kind of new management team doesn't necessarily mean that this is their doing necessarily. Now, look, to be fair, in 3, 4, 5 years from now, if we're getting stuff like this, it's all on Bob Iger. I mean, then it's Iger. Then it's this new team. Absolutely. But there is a lag. And I've been saying this even with the movies. There's a lag in this stuff where it's in the pipeline for so many years. And when it finally opens, like a movie opening now in 2024 is really a product of like 2020 or 2021, right? Because it was in that production pipeline for so long. Same goes for theme park stuff. This thing was being worked on for years. And by the time Bob Iger and the new team came in, it was probably too late. I also do want to say one more thing before I take it over to George. We've seen under Bob Iger his ability to sort of balance the money and the creativity really well. We've seen it with Cardland. We've seen it with Pandora. Countless example, DCA 2.0, I mean, all this stuff is fantastic. So he obviously knows how to do it. And that's why, and look, maybe I'm being naive. Maybe he's lost his touch. I don't know. But that's why I'm a little bit more optimistic going forward, because I've seen him do it before, right? And this particular example of Communicore, I feel, was more during the Chapek era, and it just came out now because, well, it takes time to build stuff. But George, what are your thoughts on this, brother?
Well, I was actually just going to say that it definitely, when you look at it, it screams Chapek, because he was notorious. He was a numbers guy. Yeah. He worked in consumer products. He got moved to chairman of the parks and then moved to CEO, which honestly, I didn't feel like he fit the role for either parks or CEO, to be honest. But he was a very cost-cutting type of person. And I remember when he actually wanted to cut a lot of the budget down for Rise of the Resistance. And at the time, President of Imagineering, Bob Weiss, said, we can't do that. He said, like, this ride is not meant to have any cost cuts whatsoever. It has to be what it is. So, I mean, he did fight him on that, and luckily it did proceed through, but Chapek was not happy with that. He is just the type of person that he likes to do projects to the minimum of what the price tag would be. So, as you were saying, of how this is like moving down the pipeline for several years, and this was part of the Chapek era with the whole renovation of EPCOT. Again, in the concept art of what Imagineering created, but then as Chapek is in control, whether he was chairman of the parks or CEO of the whole entire company, when he looks at that, it's like, okay, but I think we can cut some of this. We could take some of this off. And then sure enough, by the time it's actually finished, whether Iger stepped in or not, because the project was already greenlit, it was already under construction. This is the final outcome that we get.
Right. Yeah. We a lot has changed since this thing has been greenlit, management wise, and even mindset wise, and even in Imagineering itself, we've seen a lot of changes with Barbara Boza leaving recently, or not even that recently. Like I think it was like a year ago now or something. Bruce Vaughn coming back. Things have changed. So this is very much a residual kind of thing, in my opinion. But again, like if in 4 years from now we still see the like kind of like the cheap, very minimal effort stuff, then hey, you know, you can't blame Bob Chapek anymore. You know, that's all on the new team. So there's only so long that you can kind of say that. But I think in this particular circumstance, it was definitely a Chapek thing. But overall, because now I think it was who said that EPCOT is complete now? Was that our boy Josh Yamaro, or was that?
I don't know if it was tomorrow, but it was. I don't. It was one of the higher up executives. I don't remember.
It was one of the higher.
All I know is if in his eyes, if it's complete, he needs some new contact lenses.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, that was an interesting comment, but I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think that they meant literally complete. Like,
I think if that was him, to his credit, I think he meant like after so long of the construction,
this current project
is finally complete, because he's always one of saying, you know, he gets up on stage in that Demaro fashion where he's like, you know, we're going we're going to turbocharge, we're full steam ahead, you know,
right?
You know, we're not done here yet. We're just starting. It's, you know, so I don't see how he would say that and then mean it.
Yeah,
You know?
and I don't. And to be fair, I don't know if it was him. It was one. Evan, yeah, you were saying it's one of these executives. It was one of them. I forgot who it was exactly, but that was an interesting comment. But the reason why I bring that up is because you've been there now with everything kind of with all the walls down and everything. Aside from Communicore Hall, what were your overall impressions of just everything they've done outside of that?
I think that it's a World Celebration now. That's what they're calling it. So I think World Celebration is like, I think it's good. I really enjoy it. I think with all the walls down, one thing I mentioned is that, like, I forgot how big the space is. Like, there is a lot of space that they demolished and now have rebuilt certain stuff. But I would say overall, I do enjoy it a lot. Like, I think Moana Journey of Water, very good. That is a very good thing for EPCOT. And then that central space in the middle with all the pathways, planners, space to sit, eat, charge your phone, rest. That's good. That's really cool. My only complaint for that is that they took away the water feature, which kind of sucks, I will admit. But and then connections and creations, also pretty cool in my opinion. I definitely enjoy those. And like, now that it's open, I think a lot of people are looking back to Future World and interventions and stuff. And I personally, I see why it was taken out and put in all the new stuff, because honestly, it was dated by the time that it was demolished. And now this really does feel like the new Disney. It's fresh, it's clean, it looks very, very nice, I will admit.
Okay, cool. That's encouraging. I've only been to Florida once, but we did EPCOT twice because I loved EPCOT. I mean, I thought it was great. But one thing that I will give kudos to Disney for with this EPCOT renovation, and you know, they've gotten a lot of criticisms and stuff, but I think they've tried, and you know, people can say how successful that was, and that's fair. But I think they've at least tried to sort of balance, like, okay, we're going to try to have the normie appeal, right? So we're going to add the Moana thing, but then we're also going to try to sort of placate to, we're going to try to play to the diehard EPCOT fans, right? Where they brought back that, and Georgia, help me, I always forget the name of that clear spire in the entry.
Yeah, it's the oh gosh,
I forgot the name, but you guys know what I'm talking about. They brought that back, and clearly that's not a normie thing. Like, the normies aren't, like, they weren't clamoring for that to come back, I'm sure. You know what I'm saying? That was for the diehards, you know what I'm saying? And even this new test track that they're working on, it's heavily inspired by World of Motion. So it's like, that's also for the diehard fans, right? It's not for the normies, because believe me, Disney could have threw an IP in there. They could have done it Lightning McQueen style, you know, or some other IP. I'm sure they could have fit some other characters in there if they wanted to, but they're going World of Motion, which, you know, credit where it's due. They're trying to sort of play into the more diehard fans, I think. But what are your thoughts on that, Evan, in terms of like the direction with some of the stuff, kind of feeling like they're trying, at least trying. Maybe they're not landing everything, they're not sticking the landing necessarily every time, but at least trying to sort of make the diehard fans happy and not just going all in on the normie thing and just have characters everywhere.
Yeah, so I 100% agree with what you're saying. Take example like Journey of Water. That is like, it's Moana, right? It has a Moana everywhere, but at the same time, it feels very natural. And the one cool thing that someone mentioned was that Journey of Water is the first education attraction that EPCOT has had in a long time. And Epcot was built on education attractions. Like that is literally the park's identity. And so it's really cool to see something like that teaching the water cycle, but in a fun way that everyone knows and recognizes, which is Moana. And they've done a lot of things like that throughout World Celebration, specifically like in creations on the floor. There's like the original outline of what Epcot was supposed to be back when Walt designed it. That's cool. And it looks really nice. And the diehard fans, they are going to notice that kind of stuff. And that kind of stuff is all over the land. Like the benches, some of the lighting fixtures are all inspired by previous Epcot things. And that's cool because it looks really nice and the diehard fans notice it. So
Yeah, no, well said. Absolutely. Yeah, I like those little touches. I like the balancing act they were at least going for, where they're like, okay, you know, we the diehard fans, the nerds, we see you, and we're gonna give you a little something, you know. And hey, the normies, you know, hey, here's Moana, you know. Yeah. So it really does kind of work.
And I just want to confirm, it's called Prism Pylons.
There we go.
Pylons, that's the word.
Yeah. Pylons. There we go. Perfect. So let's pivot now to our last and final topic of the evening, which is Epic Universe. There's been a lot of news. We did a video the other day, George, about Dark Universe, which looks really cool. A lot of talk in the community about Epic Universe coming in to the Orlando area, opening up next summer. But we're hearing little whispers that maybe even spring. So we'll see. Now we've talked a lot about it, but Evan, this is your first time on the channel. What are your thoughts about this? Like, what kind of impact is this park going to have on Walt Disney World? Is it a big impact, positive, negative? Where do you stand with it?
So Epic Universe will be amazing. There is literally no way around that. That is going to be one of the coolest parks that any theme park has ever designed and opened, maybe even the best Universal park across the entire world. No denying that. And I would say Disney definitely has a threat because of that, because it's just right down the street. It's actually, I think, even closer to Disney World than Universal Orlando Resort is. But I think some people are blowing it out of proportion in terms of that threat, because I don't think people are realizing like the community and the fan base that Walt Disney World as a place has built. It is literally 40 square miles of land. There is an endless amount of things to do, and families have vacationed there for over 50 years now. And it has very, very deep roots. And I think that Epic Universe is a threat, but I don't think it's as big of a threat that most people think. If anything, sure, a family will leave Disney World to go do Epic Universe for a day. But I don't think in the big picture it is going to be that big of a deal.
I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree too. And I've been saying it for a long time. Like, a lot of people are also assuming that like Epic Universe is going to always pull from Disney World. It might cannibalize Universal's own parks, because a family might be looking at that going, well, okay, we'll do Epic, but do we really have to do IOA again? Man, we'll skip that one. We'll do these two parks. That's also part of the equation here, where we don't know necessarily if there is any kind of pullback, where that pullback is going to come from. You know, and also out here in California, I was hearing similar stuff, right? Well, just wait till Super Nintendo World opens out in Hollywood. Disneyland Resort's going to really take a hit. And I'm like, we haven't taken a hit. Our parks have been very busy. All those quarterly earnings calls, Disneyland Resort has been performing very well. If anything, I think Mario probably helped Disneyland Resort. I think people that were coming down here for Mario decided, hey, while we're out here, let's go to Disney too. You know, it might have a positive effect too in Florida, where it's like, you know, Epic might bring more people into the area. And while they're there, of course, you're going to go to Walt Disney World, you know. But go ahead, George. What are your thoughts on that, brother?
Well, and as Evan was saying, you know, obviously with it being a brand new park, new stuff to do, new stuff to experience, if a family were to happen to leave Walt Disney World for a day and go over to Epic Universe, great, fine. That's what I'm expecting them to do. That's what everyone's expecting them to do, you know. But as Evan was saying, it's not where it's because they're leaving Walt Disney World for the day and going over to Epic Universe. It's like, oh my gosh, Disney, doom and gloom. You know, they're gonna crumble. No, it's just, you can do both. You know, just because if you're at Disney and you go over to Universal, or if you're at Universal and you go over to Disney, that doesn't mean either company, either resort is going to suffer for it. If anything, they feed off of one another.
Yeah. No, exactly. And these companies know that, you know what I'm saying? They do know that. But yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting conversation, I think, overall. Yeah, the doom and gloomers, I think if you're expecting this thing to cripple Walt Disney World, I think you're going to be disappointed. I don't think that's going to happen, you know? I think that Disney World will be absolutely fine. But I will say this. We are keeping an eye on the D23 thing. I do think that Josh needs to really come through with that expo, because we got to see some real concrete stuff here. And I think we're going to get it, because I think, you know, look, let's be honest, like Josh is in contention to be the next CEO. He's going to want to deliver. He's going to want to look good, especially right now. So, but I think that Tropical Americas thing, we're going to get some news on that, you know, for Animal Kingdom. We'll probably get some Beyond Big Thunder stuff. So we have stuff in the pipeline, you know, for Walt Disney World, and I think they'll be just fine. But what are your thoughts on that, Evan, in terms of, like, you know, the announcements for Walt Disney World going forward? Do you think that we're going to get some biggies over there at the expo, or you think maybe not so much?
I definitely think we will. I think this is definitely going to be like one of the most important D23s that we've ever had, because this D23, by the time it comes around, Epic Universe is going to be like very close to being done. And we are in the time period where there are no like confirmed projects that are actively being worked on besides Test Track. And like that is literally just a retheme. So I think by the time, or I think Disney definitely needs to have some big things cooking, and I totally imagine they are, right? Like the Magic Kingdom expansion, I think that's definitely going to be announced, concrete details. And also, like you were saying with Tropical Americas, also 100% going to be announced. And I think the rest of it is a mystery. Disney could, you know, drop some more like crazy cool stuff, more stuff that will draw or try to keep people at Walt Disney World. But I don't know. I think those two things alone are enough to for Disney to announce.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think those two are definitely solidified as being part of the announcements. But also, Tomorrow did mention that when it comes to Walt Disney World, there's going to be more stuff mentioned than just Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom. And it's stuff that nothing has been actually even teased before. So that does make me wonder, is Epcot going to get a new country or two? You know, are they going to confirm that rumor that the what is it called at Hollywood Studios, the
Animation Pavilion,
the animation courtyard. You know, is that going to be expanded out with the expansion pad behind it? Is that going to become something? So I definitely think it's going to be a big night for Disney, and hopefully, as we all hope, and I do believe so, that Josh will deliver.
Yeah, hopefully. You mentioned new countries at Epcot. We talked about that the other day too, George. What are your thoughts on that, Evan? What countries would, if they were to add another pavilion over at Epcot at World Showcase, what countries would you want to see put in there?
I might be biased, but India. I am half Indian, so that's my blood. And there are a lot of Indian people who do visit the parks in general, and then other things like Brazil. I know Brazil, I think, was talked about being actually made at one point, and then that didn't happen. That would definitely be a very smart idea for Disney to do. So those two, I know Argentina was mentioned at one point. I know before all the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Russia was talked about at one point. And I was actually at Epcot the other day, and I was talking to some of my friends. I was like, you know, Disney has the space to expand the World Showcase, which is crazy because there are already 11 countries, but there are plots of land that they can put more really cool stuff. Now, to that, this is kind of off topic, but talking about the Morocco pavilion and the fountain, I was there and I spent like an hour in that pavilion the other day, and it is really, really disappointing what they did with that fountain. Like the handcrafted tile is everywhere in that pavilion. And that's like really important stuff, like culturally and for Disney as a company. And then they do that stuff to the fountain, and it just makes me feel like, I'm like, what? Like, what is going through their heads when they do that kind of thing? Like,
what was the mindset? Yeah, we talked about it. Like, what was the mindset? We're gonna rip this out. We're gonna put this more generic looking tile in there.
Right?
It's sad. It's sad. And that was commissioned by the King of Morocco, wasn't it? Like years ago.
Yeah. I still wonder if like something like with the contract between the country and Disney maybe is ending. Maybe Disney's trying to get out of it, because I know that there was a lot of tension between. So I don't know. Maybe that they're looking to kind of remove Morocco at some point. So they're like, why should we put out big money? I mean, I still don't like it, because I mean, I prefer like of how it actually
The
looked.
authenticity.
I mean, it looks literally like something that you would have go out and buy at Bed Bath and Beyond, and that you
and that's what makes me mad too, because like Disney is really big on like right now, like culturally appropriate stuff, right? Like respecting cultures and the diversity and all that. And it's like, then you go and do that.
Yeah.
Like it's so disrespectful. Like why would you do that? You know what I'm saying? I get it. Like those tiles were commissioned by the King of Morocco. Maybe they couldn't wing that again, but you could at least maybe reach out to people that can do those tiles. You know, it doesn't have to be necessarily from the King of Morocco. They could have done it. They could have reached out to somebody who can do these authentic tiles, you know, the handcrafted and all that. And they didn't. They just went in there and they just put regular tiles in there, like you were saying, like you can get from Bed Bath and Beyond. It's like, that's not cool. That really isn't cool. We'll see. You know, we'll see. I agree with you, Evan. I would love to know the mindset with that decision. Boneheaded decision, I'll tell you that much. Disney's a massive company. They could clearly afford, and they have every resource in the world to get those tiles back the way they were, and they dropped the ball on that. So very disappointing. Very, very disappointing. But gentlemen, a fantastic conversation. Evan, you are always welcome back. Really, really fun talking to you about Walt Disney World today. By the way,
Thank you guys.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I love your backdrop with all the music and stuff. You got Travis Scott, you got some Michael Jackson back there. I like it, dude.
Thank you. I my crown jewel is actually my Captain EO poster up there.
Nice.
It's actually it's signed by Angelica Houston.
What?
She's the queen in the movie. I was a huge Captain EO fan as a kid, so I was like, yeah, I gotta have that in my room.
That's incredible, man. That's incredible. Loving it. If you could remind everybody, Evan, where they can find you on social media.
Twitter or X, Evan Patel 11 is my handle, and then on Instagram _Evan Patel _. So I post a lot of photography and videography stuff there. So
perfect. And I'll be linking everything down below. Make sure you support Evan. Follow him on all his socials. And we got the Italiano. George, if you could let everybody home know where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Comment down below with anything on your mind that we talked about today, Walt Disney World, in terms of the EPCOT, Communicore Hall, Tiana's Bayou Adventure, World Showcase, whatever's on your mind, comment down below. We would love to hear from you. And thank you so much for watching this episode of OG 55.
Like Ice T, I'm OG. Like Ice T, I'm OG. Ice T, I'm OG. I'm demon like IT. Got more juice than High C.